YouTube, Kamen Rider here. Welcome to my review for Gotchard Episode 2. So, the show continues to be fine. Like, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but it's very much, as I said in the first review, back to basics, and that very much was felt here as well. In a lot of ways, almost feeling like an extension or a part 2 of a pilot, and it left me wishing... Like, I had two thoughts in this episode. One, it left me wishing like we would just do two-parters like I always do. But on the other hand, despite them rushing some things in the first episode to get to the toys, I also do kind of appreciate the sort of, well-paced rollout of everything. Like, they got all the basics rolled out, but then this week they kind of let you know about the mythology a little bit more. They tease our Rogue Rider guy who appears multiple times in the episode in the background and at the end. And they introduce us to our two other characters who are going to be in the show at the very end, who I honestly forgot about. So there actually is kind of a nice, more relaxed pacing to rolling out all the things from the status quo that I did kind of appreciate. But this episode was just kind of a continuation of setting up like pilot-y aspects. As we're introduced to the idea of the Academy, we get to see the base, which we saw in the trailers. He explains the Academy and says like, okay, well, you're gonna get a test, you have to change the weight of these two cards, otherwise you're out. It's funny though, because from the trailers, I thought that the Academy was the whole school, and it's just the secret society, which at the moment seems to just be these 4 to 5 people, which is kind of disappointing. It has some interesting aspects to it with the secrecy, but I actually thought from the trailer that like the whole school was the whole thing, so I thought that was interesting because I thought it was like a society where like alchemy studies was a known thing and you would have academies and stuff, and I like those series where the world and mythology is changed by whatever's going on, and I find that to be interesting. Like King Odger obviously has that being set on an entirely different world, and I feel like there's a couple other Rider shows that obviously would have that, but I don't know why off the top of my head I'm just thinking of Shinobi, which was like that Geo Rider, which their world was affected by the ninjutsu and stuff like that, and I was kind of hoping for that, so I'm a little disappointed by that. I still like the aspect of the other alchemy characters being able to do stuff, and like in general I do like the teacher character, but it's just disappointed it's so small scale in a way, and it also feels small budget, like they didn't have a budget for a bunch of other random students in a way. But that's kind of the basic setup for him, for the girl, whose name I still have not learned, so she's going to be called the girl, tells Hotaro about like how alchemy works, and then basically like in a 1 in a million chance it spawns a chemi, and like the idea, which they set up more of the idea, which I was like not confused by, but I want a clarification on, is the chemi are basically like these pure creatures, but if they get touched by human malice, that's how they transform, which this episode just clarified it more for me because I was so surprised that it was one of the main villains that became the Monster of the Week last week, and I was wondering if that was what it was going to be every week, which I think would be really interesting. But this clearly sets up a more classic Monster of the Week format, where the skateboard chemi gets, like, it's just having fun, it's just being this pure little soul skating skateboard, and then it touches the malice of this robber guy and it transforms him. So I get a feeling there's going to be mostly this type of stuff. I'm going to assume there's also probably going to be situations where the main villains will purposefully like get together a chemi and a person they want to use. But I do hope we continue that idea of the main villains sometimes just using a chemi to transform, because I thought that was super cool. But it was one of the most basic Monster of the Week sets up. Like, you set up like, okay, this is this guy and whatever he does, and he's the Monster of the Week. Like, there's really no interest in his story other than letting you know why the malice exists, which I really like. Not that I haven't enjoyed from time to time a focus on a character of the week or a two-parter, but for the most part, I don't care about the filler characters that they want to focus on for these episodes about who the Monster of the Week is infecting, so I like that this was just rather brief and basic. It also made me like think back to Dawn Brothers, the way they had that set up, and like this was a pretty unsympathetic character. But I thought it was funny, like in Dawn Brothers, they would have like your almost classic Rider-esque sympathetic story of the week of like who became the monster, but then like when they defeated him, they would just dump him back into their lives, like no lesson learned. Like they were unconcerned with helping this person, and I loved it. I thought it was just funny because it was almost like they were making fun of that formula. Yeah, so we set up the Monster of the Week guy, we introduce the bike, we get more Rider action, we technically do our first form change into the one that he got from Mantis Powers, but it's only like the final form ride version, and it's used very briefly, so I liked that because it gave the illusion that we actually gave an episode to breathe before a formal form debut, which we did, because he only technically used that form in what I felt like was a whirlwind, and next week we're gonna, actually use the form. So I did kind of like that, just because I like there to be a little bit of breathing room with that type of stuff. And it kind of sets up and more solidifies Hotaro's motivations as well, as he's talking with his mother about, talks with her about like the dad actually. Basically sets up like an Ash Ketchum backstory, where the dad just disappeared Ash Ketchum and Brock's dad backstory, to be honest, because Brock's dad did the same thing, where he just left to go achieve his dream one day. and left the shop with the mom, who that was originally his dream. Like, the shop was his dream, and then he's like, nah, it's not my dream. My dream is to leave you. And then she's like, I support that. And that's what they set up. Clearly, they're going to set up a mystery for later. I'm almost certain he'll be involved in all this business somehow. And because they also tell a tale about like a legendary alchemist. They have like a flashback to the girl's backstory with her dad being tales of a legendary alchemist that I think is going to be Gotchard or something involved with that. And he also does, like, they don't tell us, like the audience now, that it's her dad, but we know if we read the stuff about it or watched the trailers, and they just kind of acknowledge it, and she's mad at him for being a traitor. So I do like that they mostly acknowledge, they know, like, she knows who he is, and it's not like a mystery where, like, it's a misunderstanding where they both know this information and don't know that each other knows it. So I liked that at least. But anyway, like I was saying, they set up a bit of his motivation and backstory about his dad, and that like they acknowledge that he's kind of found his purpose through this Gotchard stuff, or has begun to find his purpose. His basic motivation is, like, as far as being Gotchard, is he wants, basically, to boil it down, he actually just, he thinks the chemis are too pure for this world, and he wants to protect them, which I think is really funny. And, you know, I can get behind it. I don't hate him so far. I'm still not a big fan of this kind of twerpy, idealistic character, but he's not super annoying so far. You know, he has the kind of relatable motivation of trying to find his place in the world, and he wants to protect these pretty adorable little creatures. I do have to admit, though, that especially seeing the preview for next week when there's a line in the trailer about, I want to protect chemis so they can be free and live in this world with us. It's, I mean, this series in general is feeling similar to a lot of series, but it's definitely giving me 0-1 vibes. So there's a lot of very repeated tropes in this series, but at least I can get behind protecting little monster creatures instead of protecting Terminators. But I am a little bit worried about that. Like I said, the series has been formulaic overall so far. I've still been enjoying myself just fine, but I'm definitely worried about experiencing a little bit burnout with it being so back to basics in a lot of ways. But maybe it's too soon to worry about that. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is I'm really curious how successful the Chemi are going to be. I think that they're really pushing them hard as these fun little collectible creature card game things to be, you know, a major selling point. And I'm curious to see how successful they are, because it almost feels forced, like they really want Chemis to happen. Like, don't get me wrong, I like them. I think there's some good designs and adorable stuff, and I like the cards, but I just feel like they're really wanting this to happen, and it feels like something that's not just going to happen organically. So I'll be curious to see how successful these are popular as little buddy creatures for the Rider universe. But yeah, overall, another average episode, 3 out of 5, very much back to basics like it has been. I'm still, like I said, enjoying myself, and I'm like base level intrigued, but I'm not like super intrigued where I'm thinking about it and theorizing when I'm not watching it. So I'm hoping that some stuff happens that will intrigue me more as the series goes on. But what do you guys think? Are you enjoying the series so far? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell. See you notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.